Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. And thank you for tuning into the latest episode of the Astro News Network after taking a week off, the Season 2 premiere. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in already. Got a lot of people in chat. It's very nice. Usually that doesn't happen. And what mustache are we talking about here? Is something different? Regardless, we have a lot to talk about as we're halfway through July. The biggest news is obviously on Utopia. Just the other day, WM launched a lot of their fleet into the U-20s on Thursday. So we're going to talk about that for at least an hour. For those who are not in the know, we're going to be talking about some of the usual Astro Empire's player groups and their histories. And I'll be going over some of the perennial guilds that have appeared on several servers over the past few years. Tuxedo Marx of Guild Fake, formerly of Guild XOXO, they changed their name, is going to come on. We're going to talk about why the Astro Empire's community is generally very mean, and life in the A40s and their trip down to the 30s last week. There's also going to be the definitive Antares Timeline to review for this nearly 4-month-old server. And that timeline, oh my goodness, a bunch of gift subs going out all over the place. Beast Mages, super thank you so much. I really appreciate it. But our final event today will be the Antares Timeline. Okay, we're just going to listen to Price is Right music for a few seconds, because Beast Mages has just made it rain. Anyway, the Antares Timeline, which leads into no! No, but also yes. There was something else that happened on the past 2 weeks on Antares that the timeline is going to lead into, but I'm really having trouble getting to it. This is really derailing the news here. Wow, I think there's one more, guys. Yeah, the biggest thing that happened, oh, here we go again. Unfortunate. This was not 1 week. This was a full month of facial growth effort. This is all I could do after 1 month. Oh, is there any more? I don't know. That might be it, boys. We're also going to talk about everything that happened in the A30s over the last 2 weeks. Japan. Do we even remember Japan? They're gone. They're gone off the map. We're going to talk about how we got there, everything that led to it, everything that happened. There's a lot to talk about. We're going to break it all down. You cannot follow, unfollow, and refollow to get it to pop up. It actually doesn't do that, surprisingly. I would love to do that to people, but you can't, so that's unfortunate. So everyone, get a glass of sangria to get ready. We have a lot to talk about this week. I know at the end of the last episode, I talked about doing some different production fun things, which I didn't get to finish any of them. The green screen didn't show up until yesterday afternoon, so I didn't get everything else done. But a lot of the work on the ANN anime intro is coming along very well. It's going to be very memey. But that is some tangible evidence when you see that green screen that your subscriptions have gone to very good use, and they're very appreciated. It's given me the ability to make way better bits and content. And, I don't mean to brag, but just the other day I got the best piece of mail in my life. I got a letter from Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, asking me to send him non-tax deductible money to the Trump Make America Great Again committee. And I think it's not a scam because they really made it look like it's a medical bill, which I got really hyped for, to make it look like it was a bill. But it's important that by standing together, only we can keep the Democrats from winning the White House, gaining total control of our government, and opposing their destructive, big government socialist agenda on our nation. So please return your membership contribution of $45, $90, $135, or whatever you can send by the end of the month. Whew. But there's some great juicy paragraphs in this back and forth letter with a definitely real signature from Donald Trump here. It's the best mail I've ever gotten to be addressed by the president. And I actually got upset about my wife over this because she had apparently gotten this same or very similar letter like a month ago and didn't tell me about it, which is absurd because it's one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. Anyway, let's talk about some Astro Empires related things. President doesn't matter. Astro Empires does matter. But obviously, biggest story of the week. Oh my god. Utopia. After a long period of inaction on Utopia, Scott's Guild WM, they actually made a move, by launching through the wormhole from the 10s to the 20s, which were left wide open by RD. They didn't expect that move. But WM came in, they got to hit a couple inactive fleets, hit a handful of bases for some big inactive pillages until RD sent 500 million through the wormhole after them the other day, and then WM actually pulled their fleets out this time and didn't get killed like their first trip when they went through the wormhole to the zeros after Baylor. Scott, you're going to say that's Wodan's guild? It's not, I thought you were the GM, Scott. Did you secretly not become GM anymore? That's a lie. I mean, Wodan is the hard carry. That's a guarantee. Scott's dead weight confirmed. No responsibility, sure. But there is another Utopia wormhole change coming up soon, so maybe we'll see if WM gets cute and does something else again. We'll see if they ramp up the activity or if it fizzles back down into the boring long game do nothing again like it's been for the last 2 months. Anyway, there's an even bigger update on super old, like 2.5-year-old Lynx server for Merlin, his guild. I mean, did anyone know Lynx was still a server? I didn't. Over the last week, Merlin's Guild High dealt some damage to the Guild Thog, the only other guild left on that server. I guess they derbed or made them derb 100 million of their own fleet. Merlin promised me he would chase them down to give me a crash to talk about. So maybe, in the future, Lynx might get to be more than just a tiny little footnote again. And moving on to Antares, what everyone wants to see for Antares, we're going to bring up the bi-weekly rankings. Here we go. Top 5 guilds by level this morning. We're OPA, USSR, SF, D&D, and VVV. So if you don't see the first upper 30s guild until you scroll way down, I think it was 17th place is TNT. Rankings by fleet. I'll get to it, Atreides. Don't you worry. Don't skip. The top 5 guild fleets were USSR, OPA, SF, VVV, and D&D. But OPA was gaining so much on USSR over the last couple days, I wouldn't be surprised if they haven't passed them since I screenshotted this earlier this morning. If you go to the Rankings XP, you look at the top 5 guilds, you got War, Go, D&D, TNT, and Total. With all the 30s action over the last couple of weeks, I would have thought only 30s guilds would have been on there. But I guess Go killed so much Total fleet weeks ago that they're still up there on experience. Who'd have known? If you look at our top 10 individual players, sure enough, it's still USSR Elite. And the rest of the top 10, there's 6 20s players, there's 2 more USSR players, and 1 guy from SF Paleo. They round out the top 10. Let's see, what is chat complaining about now? Imagine sorting by totals instead of averages. I mean, I don't really need like the 2-man guild with their like wackadoo averages popping up there for experience. That doesn't really interest me. But I mean, you can look at that on your own though. The ranks chart is for everyone. This isn't a private thing. This is public information. You don't even have to be logged in to see the ranks. Anyway, I'm going to take my quick moment to do that little self-promotion thing that takes 30 seconds. I'd like to thank everyone here that watches, followed, subscribed, or dropped a bunch of gift subs at once. That's always nice. And here's a friendly reminder that if you do have Amazon Prime, you get that free monthly subscription to your favorite streamer on Twitch. And you can use this free subscription every month. And if you're not watching live, I do upload this to YouTube the next day for old people who don't realize that Twitch is just a video site like any other one. And every follow and subscribe there is appreciated too. Oh, big boy Atreides. Thank you so much. Live. I guess they KD'd Zahaga because he quit. Womp womp. I mean, what are you gonna do? At least this time they kicked out the person who was quitting instead of someone just dropped out of the guild and hit them while they were still in the guild so they could get fined for credit transfer like they did with Cloak. So they're learning. They're getting better. I mean, there's nowhere to go from up for where they are right now. But those are all the other little minor headlines. But we're not going to get to the A30s talk until we get through the full timeline, because there's a lot of things that go in the timeline that all link together that lead to the full storm that was in the 30s. So it all goes together. But before we get to that, yeah, I'm baiting you till the end of the episode. We're going to talk about all the different Esther Empires player groups that we have that I'm very excited to talk about. This is something that has been surprisingly an often requested feature for the news. There have been a bunch of people that aren't like frequent chatters in the Discord have said, hey, can you talk about this? Because there's just a really extremely vocal minority in the Discord that are those frequent chatters that know everything. And there's a lot of people out there that are just generally unaware of the deep-seated drama that goes back years and years, possibly over a decade, between the various guilds and groups that play this great game. I'm not doing the super like historical look. We're only going to go back to the roughly the last 2-3 years or so, because that's been its own time frame of the game where it's been at its lowest, and there's the same groups of people have been playing for the last 3 years. If you're a group that came back just for Antares, that's unfortunately, I think that doesn't really make you like a full perennial guild group. It's a new decade. It's 2020. New decade, new you. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of groups that came back for Antares. It was a whole lot of individual people that came back. And some of them are playing together in D&D in the 30s, but they haven't played for a long time, so they don't have any history in the last 3 years. But without further ado, let me pull up my second page of notes. This is good God, I wrote almost 5,000 words for this episode. We're going to go to the first group. Here we go. Please no Cancer Crew flame. Why would I flame Cancer Crew? And how shocking that they're the first person on the list. First group, Cancer Crew, who are probably the most active people that are participating in the Discord. It's CC, Cancer Crew. They've been around for a very long time. In-game, they're known for being, I'll use the word obnoxious. They're usually a smaller group of players, and they've known each other forever. They're very confusing in the Discord because they'll call each other by their real names. So if you're not on the inside, you don't know who the hell they're talking about, which is adorable. Also, they're very weeby. Their main leader, their main GM guy, is FKA BNK, Fuckabank, also known as Chris. The first time I can remember him making a guild was on Juno. They used to do a lot of big mass recruit guilds, and then they transitioned more into just their smaller groups of guilds with their friends. They used to multi and cheat very hard. And roughly 3 years ago, there was a huge anti-cheaters movement. And just no matter what Cancer Crew would do, everyone else would just try to zerg them out of the server. And they didn't like that very much, in a shocking turn of events. Even on, I think their smallest guild ever was on Frontier. They had maybe 20 people, but the zeros and tens combined to farm them off the server anyway. It was very silly. Some of the recent guilds, they made dogs on Nexus, and they're in Go and Antares. Some of their notable players. You see Frosty Goblin. He's in chat right now. He's a real sweetheart. See, some friends. They formed a tentative working relationship with the Boomers on Nexus, which really it's barely a working relationship because they just flamed each other so hard and they'll never actually be in a guild together again. That did not last for very long. They're good friends with good old Scotty. And they're sort of barely friends with Baylor and I'm saying that because they're packed to him on both Utopia and Antares. So they're just friends by necessity. And I guess their blood feud goes with Belwar, because Belwar, just no matter what, Cancer Crew's in 09, Belwar's in the lower 10s, and he just spends his life launching after Cancer Crew. Laren says, flaming guilds to death from the inside is the best strat. That is a good strat. All right, let's see who is next on the list. Oh, speaking of ancient history, all right, here we go. Does this group even exist anymore? Let's pull them up. Cloak and Zahaga, the Zergers. These dudes are relatively newer GMs compared to the other guys on the list. Their strategy, since at least Mystic, was to just get as many people together as possible pre-server, stick them all right next to each other in the same cluster, and just win by sheer numbers. And over the last month and a half or so, they've just died on all their servers that their giant empires have existed. I think they first died on Utopia, which was actually a while ago, but they died on Nexus about a month and a half ago. Then they died on Mystic a few weeks ago, and everything just fell apart for them on Antares over the last 2 weeks. 13th was part of their pre-server on Nexus as well. Cute. Fun. But yeah, you can see as you go look down the list of names, they just have more and more guilds and players that they brought along. Right now, I don't know of any server that Cloak is still leading on. I know he quit off Antares. He gave his guild, Japan, there to Deathwalker. Deathwalker renamed it to the USS Missouri. They're friendly with the Slip and Jimmy and Trace group. They play together, same with Detroit Fan on. They all play together on Utopia and BFG. I know they played together with Detroit Fan on their start in Mystic, one of the 3 groups they had starting there that formed a triad. But yeah, when they started these really, really large groups, it just completely. I'm going to steal the word from Chansey. Chansey always described it as they throttle the server, the speed of the server, because they have the most fleet in their guilds in their cluster because they shove the most people into 5 galaxies. But then they do nothing with it. So everyone's kind of stuck because the guild that has the most fleet in their cluster, they should be the ones going on the offensive, but they never did. So their servers would just kind of sit still. And that was that. But yeah, so eventually they're tired of doing nothing and nothing. They kind of go inactive because their guilds aren't doing much, so their players aren't logging in as much, and eventually they lose allies because they're not doing anything with their other allies that are in other clusters, and then they eventually get killed. So right now they don't have much of a process, or I guess I will say a couple of years ago on Sigma, whenever that was, 2-3 years ago, they did win on Sigma. They beat Cancer Crew there. I didn't really play Sigma, so I don't know what happened there, but that's where they have their too easy on Sigma there. That was when their plan worked, but it didn't work any time after that. All right, let's pull up the next group, which is absolutely related to Cloak and Zahaga. Trace and Slip and Jimmy. Yeah, they're very similar. They all play together. The Trace and Slip and Jimmy big group, they play together with the much larger Cloak and Zahaga group on BFG. It's a similar thing. Trace and Slip and Jimmy, they used to play with Irish Eyes back in the day, if you remember him. But a lot of their things have fallen apart on other servers over the last couple of years. That same Mystic Nexus. Did Trace or Slip and Jimmy even play Nexus? I don't know. Maybe they did, maybe they did. If they did, if they didn't play Nexus, it's fake news, whatever. But probably the Trace and Slip and Jimmy blood feud has to go out to Mr. Black of the Boomers, because something happened between them on Utopia. Mr. Black wanted to go on and op. Trace didn't want to go on and op. And that was the greatest sin of all time. And so now they hate each other with the deepest of passions. Notable players. Oh, Toot. Toot was, we found out in OPA that Toot, his account was at the very least being logged by Trace to spy on OPA, so that was fun. That's a notable player of theirs. But they have friends. You have Trace and Slip and Jimmy. They're friends with themselves. Generally friends with Cloak and Zahaga. They were allied on Antares. I know they used to be friends with Detroit Fan, playing together back on Mystic. But the past couple servers, Detroit Fan hasn't played with them or Cloak Zahagas. So maybe he's breaking away after Utopia. That's right. Next group, I've already mentioned them a few times, the Boomers. Let me get their text in here. All right, the Boomers. Obviously called because they're some of the more older players that have just played the game for a long time and are old and boring. Some of the worst memers in the game for sure. Oh, they're not good memers. That's a guarantee. But a lot of them came back on Typhon because Vile, If you played a long time, you know who Vile is. He wanted to just zerg the shit out of Typhon. And he brought back a lot of the old big names. And some of those guys were the boomers, and some of them stuck around after Typhon. I'd say the boomers probably officially came back together on Mystic, because there was some of the boomers were in the teens, and some of the boomers were in the 20s. Like Mr. Black was in the 20s, Chansey was in the teens, and they got together, and that was history. Ever since then, Black and Chansey been best friends forever. But I'm in OPA. I'm part of the boomers on Antares, but they have a lot of very experienced people in their leadership circle. So like they're usually not super reckless guys. But they've also they've made the point of like taking the lead against like that Cloak Zahaga Zerg on the past few servers, and they did it. I mean, granted, it wasn't the hardest target in the world. They had a lot of fleet, but they weren't doing anything with it. But they killed them anyway. Some guilds they've recently been in. They're Bust on Mystic. They're RD on Utopia. Dogs on Nexus. OPA on Antares. Dono, you made it. Congratulations. Hey there, Mended. Yeah, notable players. Yeah, anyone that's a Mr. Color, that's an RD dude. Mr. Black, Chansey. Even Wheels has recently jumped ship from the Trace, Slip and Jimmy, Zergo side. They're sort of friends with Cancer Crew. They're sort of friends with the Spork group, which I'll talk about them later. They're part of Bust on Mystic. And they're enemies, permanent enemies of the Zergers. They don't like Trace, and they don't like Scott for some reason, because he did anything with Trace on Antares, so they really don't like Scott, even though Scott doesn't do anything. He's not bad at all. He's just a kid. China, they're a group too, that are literally just a bunch of Chinese players. And they also have, allegedly, they have a few multi-accounts that are not real players. Some people say they're just new players, but I've heard rumors that they are, in fact, potentially not real players. Anyway, China's been around since, I believe, Kappa was their first server. They started on my guild. It sucked because they killed us. They like their 1.5 servers. They didn't really like the 2.0 servers. It's hard to tell if they've liked this 3.0 style game, but I mean, they're here on it. In recent history, they won Typhon, their guild Mo. They won that. And really, on most servers that they played on, they were very successful, unless there was like a concerted effort to screw them over, like on Utopia. Surprisingly, on Utopia, BFG, which was the combination of Detroit Fan Group, Trace, Slip, and Jimmy groups, and the Cloak Zahaga groups, they all lumped together to fight China on Utopia, and they managed to actually beat them at the start, which is surprising. But some recent China guilds, Mo on Typhon, they're ABS on Utopia, and they're surprisingly, yeah, that's one of their rare like non-factor guilds. They're nothing on Utopia. And on Antares, they have VVV and RA. Those are their two guilds there. They're notable players and leaders, Eric Chen and Yoshino. Eric Chen doesn't really play so much anymore, but he was like the first main leader from China. Friends with Trace. Trace wanted to start with them on Antares, so they're friends with them. Old school Vile. They're friends with Vile. Enemies, Cancer Crew, Boomers, Zergos. They got a lot of enemies. But that doesn't stop people from wanting to start with them pre-server. And another ally of the teens on Antares, let's bring up good old Belwar. Hashtag Recall King 2020. He starts guilds on most servers, and through various ups and downs, he's usually somehow still on them. I mean, he has a decent group of players, probably not the best ever, but they're his crew. They're active for him. They do well. And they have a wide range of success from mediocre to decent. They usually kind of play more for fun nowadays. And he tries his best to go on ops as much as possible. Every 2 weeks, he's doing his best to launch at 09, the Cancer Crew. One of his usual tags is spam. That's on a bunch of servers. You can still see it on Gaia. BYOB, Bring Your Own Belwar. That's a good name. I like that on Utopia. And their Total Recall on Antares. Swearingen plays for him. Czar plays on him. Known crazy person Lokify also plays with him. He's good friends with Scott. They play together on Utopia. And he's been a friend of Baylor on a lot of prior servers, too. Enemies, Cancer Crew, somehow they just end up on the wrong side. Not really a personal thing, they just end up on the wrong side. That's just what happens. I don't know, it's hard to say. This one barely even counts as a group, but we'll talk about it, because somehow this guy just takes flame well. This is Scott, a Scott group. Scott and friends are kind of like Belwar's group, but they're worse. Kind of like a light version of Cancer Crew, but they're not good at Astro Empire's accounts or trolling. They play for fun, but it's just Scott as GM. Discount Cancer Crew, that's right. I mean, Scott is, after like a year or whatever on Utopia, Scott has only finally taken his guild like on ops and stuff. It's been over a year. I mean, maybe if he had gone on some ops earlier, he might have, I might say that Scott has great focus. But I type C, I put somehow their guild on Utopia is doing all right. Which by all right, I mean they are currently rank 1. But the rank 2 and 3 are against them. Takes flame well. Mr. Black confirms, takes flame well. The big crash of U36, you were lucky to get invited on that op, I think. But some Scott guilds, has WM on Utopia. There's USSR on Antares, which he started with Trace, but he kind of left with it. Let's see. Some notable players, good old Rethok. Refresh the screen. How did it get blurry? Oh, God. Why is it blurry? Because it doesn't look blurry for me. What can I do? Okay, so other people... All right, well, you know what? I'm sorry it's blurry, but I'll just keep reading all the words on the screen so you don't really have to read it anyway. How about that? Okay, yeah, everyone else just refresh. Not me. Not me! I'm glad we could delegate that blame. Whew. Dodged a bullet there. Alrighty here. Alright, next group, U-Corp. That's the Detroit fan group. He's made the guild U-Corp on a bunch of servers. They have a very strong player group, but I feel like they don't actually have any confidence that they have really good players. Like, I mean, Antares, the server with the most players in a long time, they have the best averages. But, like, if we're going to go back a year to that speed server, like, they didn't even want to try to fight Cancer Crew regularly. Like, they have really good players, and they just, like, don't know it. I don't understand. But anyway, usually they say they're going to be like a small independent guild, but they usually end up joining the bigger alliance. My gosh, I just, like, they have really good players, but, and like, they have the opportunity to be that actual, like, a smaller independent group, but they don't do it. I don't get it. Yeah, but they've recently playing with, they're in the 20s with the Boomers there, and they go on their ops together with them. They went together with BFG on Utopia, Triad on Mystic. Yeah, Calicorn, he's the wackiest person of their group, which lets you know they're not the most trolly people in the world. But some places they played, Triad on Mystic, BFG Utopia, their U-Corp and Shreks on Antares. Yeah, a bunch of notable players with good accounts. You got Meow, Finch, Yofor, Zarchiel, all great players. And Big Lebowski says, we have mad confidence. Yeah, Tuxedo, you're so right. Perfect pair with Boomers, because they are super non-memers. And I put on both their friends and enemies Cloak Sahaga, because, like, while they've played with Cloak Sahaga before, like, they've kind of broken away from them over the last couple servers, and like a Nexus, they didn't start with them. They ended up in the 20s, and the 20s here on Antares, and they were totally fine with farming the shit out of them last week. So I'm not sure where really that fence is lying. But Cancer Crew is an enemy of theirs. Scott is an enemy of theirs. Yeah, that's Detroit fan. I feel like they have super great potential, but they don't just do it sometimes. Here's a crazy person, Dat Playful Sin. I'll say he's colorful. That's the nice way to say it. And he's not a big fan of cheaters. He's always very busy in the summer, but he always plays his winter servers, which means he'll be ready for B 3.0. Golden Sun is a DPS boy through and through. He knows what I'm talking about. He has his guild Boat on Nexus. They're currently rank 1. DPS usually makes his tag RPR, Ravage, Pillage, Repeat, which is a terrible, terrible, terrible guild name. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. And DPS is a confirmed weirdo, but I do like him. He's the fun kind of weird. I like him. His Diplo can be potentially fluid. As I wrote here, he's a very emotional man. He doesn't hold anything back. He was definitely the least restrained person that has been on the news. God, he really lit into Zahaga. Because Zahaga's, his guild, launched on his guild on Nexus. It's not even like they did like a shady Pearl Harbor thing. His like DPS and Zahaga's guild just did a crash, and he just went, and DPS was like, this is the end of the universe. But that's just DPS. That's just what he is. Yeah. Yeah, look at all the DPS fans coming out. Yeah, Diplo with DPS is like being on a roller coaster. Perfect. Zeno, who made the guild I ran on Antares. That was a lot of DPS players there. And another group here. Boom, boom. We have Spork. Spork's kind of a smaller, probably lesser known group, but just because they're lesser known doesn't mean they don't exist. Spork. I believe they started on Kepler. They're definitely a very group of active players. And just from what I've seen, they often end up on like their servers after Kepler. Somehow they've ended up with Mr. Black helping them out. Like on Mystic, he was in the 20s with them and kind of helped them make the right choices. And on Antares, they started with the Detroit Fan U-Corp group. And now they've ended up kind of together with that. What's our name? What's our guild on OPA? I forgot my own guild. And Mr. Black's with us on OPA, of course. Cyanide and Lucian were, after the Chansey super fail crash on Mystic a year ago, it was Cyanide and Lucian that took over the guild on Mystic. And they kept people active, they kept us doing ops, they had us farming the 30s 100,000 times. So they kept people getting credits and ended up crashing Triad again a year later, and it worked out. Oh no, it's the same. Oh no, it's not those. It's not that Spork. This is a Spork from 3 years ago, not the Spork from 10 years ago. But I can see how you could be confused. Yeah, that was a thing to bring up. But oh my goodness, we have the very last player group here. Couldn't forget Baylor. If you want to go back through ancient history, Baylor comes from like the boomer coaching tree. If you go way back to like RD and First, like he inherited some of those like Mr. Black and Adex guilds way back in the day. And so that gave him a great player base to make his server crushing guilds out of after that. He used to be just Balor without the Y. But I don't know exactly when he put the Y in, but since he's added the Y, he's been much more relaxed and not trying to just like crush servers with his guilds. Some of his recent guilds, he has BMF on Kepler, ELO on Utopia, SF on Antares. That's 3 guilds, and they're all like BMF, number 1 on Kepler. Like he essentially won that server. And yes, Dasa points out on his friends list, he's friends with Cancer Crew, friends with them on ELO and Antares, but he's also friends with our Savior, Jesus Christ. Close personal relationship with him. And some very old players also play with him too. Sarah Bunny, Mystical Icon, Minnie. And I don't know of Baylor having any like super blood feuds. I mean, is anyone else going to say that he has a blood feud? Help me out here. Alicus hates Baylor. Yes, he does. Alicus, no? Is Alicus no? No. I mean, Alicus, his player group hasn't played... Like, the last server he played was Elysium. He played there with Hash on Elysium about 4.5 years ago. So that's not exactly recent history. I mean, we can talk about him. He has his like tight knit player group that he invited a few people back to Antares. They started in what is it, A33, and he hasn't played any other servers before that. He now runs the 30s because he crushed his weekly diplomatic upper 30s allies, and that's Alicus's group. um, Simple as that. Yeah, yeah. He's not a perennial. He's not a. Yeah, he's not a perennial guild guy yet. Once he plays B 3.0, he can do it. But I mean, I did just talk about him. I just talked about him winning the 30s cluster. Anyway, Spartan, you brought Halicus, I bet. Anyways, but that is all of our player groups, and we have one guest on today, and you've probably seen him in chat already. Tuxedo Marx. We're going to talk to him. So if you give us just a minute, I'm going to get him on the call. We'll bring him on, and we're going to talk about some Master Empire stuff. So give us just a minute, boys. We'll be right back with Tux Marx. All right, guys, we're back with Mr. Tuxedo Marx. Used to be known as King Droid. How you doing today, Mr. Tuxedo Marx King Droid?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Good, good, good. I'm glad you're happy to be here. That's great. Tuxedo has played the game for a long, long, long time. Do you want to give everyone just that brief breakdown on your Astro history? I know it goes back to at least Phoenix.
Yeah, so I started playing in beta. I came over with another group from another game. I played, on and off since then. I played CD, kind of hopped around. A big one for me was Phoenix, as you mentioned. I ran a guild mods when I was like 14 years old, so that was, quite exciting. Played Gamma with Pokemon, hopped around for a while since then. Played Juno with Chris. That was when I met Stella as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of, it's really, not too notable. I just kind of been around. I mostly die regularly. Either from my own guild or from some other guild that hates me a lot. So,
Oh yeah, standard. And real quick to chat. There will definitely be no mustache for next week because my wife said that this needs to be shaved off before she gets home from work today. So this will definitely be gone.
Ouch! Ouch!
Yeah. So what's next? I don't want to jump all the way up to Mystic where I last bumped into you.
Man, my memory of this, like, it's kind of weird because I'll hear from other people about servers I played and did things on, and I literally don't remember playing that server. Apparently I betrayed some people on Kappa or something. Who fucking knows, dude? I just kind of show up, things happen, I leave. Iridium was a pretty big one. I had a really good account, and then everything went terribly, as
yes. Oh,
are
yes.
very well aware. Yeah, sometimes I just go back through the server list and look. I played Andromeda was fucking awful. I remember that one. That was terrible. Yeah, I don't know. I played Lynx for a little bit. Jade. Oh, Jade was another big one I played. I played that with. I was with Slip and Jimmy, but then also like Cancer Crew was there, and then we all quit Slip and Jimmy's guild to backstab them to help me out win. It was
Nice.
just
Excellent.
yeah, and then it was Mystic,
Yeah.
where I was with Chansey and whatnot. You know.
Yeah. Yep. And now you're back on Antares because a lot of times you just kind of just do your own thing, random start, and you know how to build an account, and so you end up becoming relevant.
It's hard to say if I have a group because I don't.
Yeah.
There's various people that jump between liking me and disliking me based on how recently I've played with them.
Yeah, you're a floater,
and so I'll get periodically invited by random people to play with them.
Yeah. Yep, I understand that completely. I try to bounce around, but yeah,
it's more fun that way. I think that's the proper way to play for me, at least.
Yeah. So, how did you end up in the 40s in Fate? Did you like plan to start in the 40s, or did you just did you restart from somewhere else? How'd you end up with Stella?
I was on one of many Astro Empire's hiatuses at the time.
Mm-hmm. Standard.
Yeah, and Stella just randomly DM'd me on Discord and was like, "Hey, do you want to play?" And I was like, "Sure. Where am I starting?" And he said, "Start right now in A43. It's 2 weeks into the server." And I was just like, "All right." And he's like, "Yeah, we're just spamming. We're going full P-ring rush, hoping for the best." I was like, "Yeah, sounds good. Who do we have?" And he's like, "I don't know. I'm still inviting people."
Because he had started in OPA, but he declared that our ring rush was so boring that he wanted to go, I guess, leave and do his own ring rush in the 40s.
So, yeah, he was telling me it was really boring there.
Oh, dude,
he didn't want to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, OPA is a super boring. Like, it's not a jokey on the boards guild. Oh, it is.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised it happened.
Yeah, the 40s are pretty like lax. Like we have like such a nihilistic attitude, which is what happens when you start even late for the 40s. Like we were still a week behind everyone else in the 40s, let alone everyone on the server at large. So you go into the server expecting to die, and it kind of makes everything a little more
fun, you know? Potential for fun. Yeah,
like if you get farmed, it's like, well, it's because one player brought 300,000 fleet. And our whole guild has 200,000.
Yeah, because the 40s...
what can you do?
Yeah, the 40s were getting constantly memed on by the 30s. For the moment they were able to fly up there, the 30s were just obsessed with the 40s. Trying to attack some guilds, and then attack other guilds, and not have a pact with this guild anymore. But now this new guild is going to be our ally. A lot of nonsense went on in the 40s throughout your trip.
Dude, it was insane. I couldn't follow it. I just let Stella do it, and then I would harass him like once a week to just like give me a big update on what was the latest, because I couldn't tell. Like since I started late in the server, I didn't know where any other guild was. New guilds just showed up randomly, and I was like, where are they from? Why are they here? I don't know. A new guild would show up in the 40s. That was a new puppet guild for some other cluster. Stella had to do a lot of work to stop us from getting killed.
And that all the time that wasn't completely successful. Like I know, like DPS was like trying to do like some backdoor talks, and screenshots got forwarded as they tend to do. And I remember
to defend DPS, it was a little. They were taken out of context.
Screenshots taken out of context.
Yeah, I mean, like that one surprised me too, because like we got derbed by war and backstabbed, and then we got told why, and no one even like talked to us about it. They just literally took the screenshots, never talked to us, and then killed us for the screenshots. And we were just like, all right, that's what can you do?
Because in their defense, Zahaga doesn't already like DPS, and DPS does not like Zahaga. So DPS was definitely out for blood there. And two, even when you get those screenshots, you can't just be like, hey, I saw these screenshots where you said you were going to kill us. Are they true? Or are they going to be like, yes, they are true. We're busted. Or do you say like, no, I wasn't trying to stab your guild.
That's true.
It's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Usually the truth lies somewhere.
DPS has since been taken off diplomatic responsibilities.
He should never be in charge of diplomatic.
Yeah, it's just, even if he does a fine job, it's too risky. Who knows who's out to kill that guy?
Yeah, that is incredibly accurate. But you guys finally got to get a piece of revenge on the 30s over the last 2 weeks. Yeah, do you want to just tell me about how that's gone for you?
Yeah, I'm pretty fucking stoked about it. The 40s has been one big game of like diplomatic cat and mouse, and like
Trek's coming, and now Japan's coming, and Trek's coming again, and now War's coming, and Trek's coming again. And,
exactly. Yeah. Well, they'd be like, oh, we have a pact with Japan. And then all of a sudden they start hitting our bases, and we message the guy and are like, hey, why are you hitting us? We have a pact. And he goes, well, it doesn't count in your ninjas don't count. Yeah, that was the big need. We got a lot of those where we were told, yeah, we're pacted, we're not hitting each other, but ninjas don't count.
Ninjas don't count.
Yes, it was very good.
You didn't know that? Oh.
Yeah. The thing is not listed anywhere else. We were never told that. And then they would just go, oh, just DM or, message our GM. Mm-hmm. And we message the GM and get nothing back.
Yeah.
So we pretty much have hated the 30s despite being pacted with them, quote
air quotes, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Big air quotes.
Yeah.
So killing them was
good.
With Ali coming up, like me and Ali have our ups and downs, but I will say his moves in the 30s have been pretty impressive. And him coming and honestly, it's kind of weird because you don't expect Ali to be the big like diplomat, but he's the only one who handled the 40s as like a real cluster and as something like a resource that's not just a way to gain credits, but like an actual like diplomatic resource for the future and like worth building relationships with,
Yeah, because like OPA, like Chansey, worst diplomat, he's a terrible diplomat. Like we had like a sort of relationship with DYE when you're going for Japan, but we had nothing with you. Chansey generally doesn't like pacts. And so the 40s, like the cluster wants to be a cluster, and despite the 30s constant meddling of, well, we're going to kill this guild now and try to prop up that guild, and now we're going to kill that guild but prop up a different guild. There were still a lot of people left in the 40s that were eventually going to try to be an actual cluster, because I remember they tried to prop up like Lost, but Lost was like smaller than DYE and XO, so like that wasn't going to work out for them. And Alicus was actually like, hey, DYE and XOXO, do you want to be a cluster? And you guys are like, of course, we'd love to not just be 30s farmland.
Like DYE and XOXO have been like pretty consistently like friendly, like despite people trying to like play us off each other and get us to kill each other. Like, I mean, say what you want about like DYE in terms of like they're a classic 40s guild in the sense that some guys showed up, started recruiting any half decent player they could, and built a guild out of nothing.
Yeah.
But they also didn't do the thing that most of those guilds do, which is like be incredibly aggro at literally everyone around them for no reason. Like they did legitimately want to like find a good ally, like a trustworthy ally,
and like be relevant. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Play the cluster, like the server for real.
Because I think
all these other guilds were not there for that.
Yeah, because Chansey had the opportunity to do it, and he didn't want to. So yeah, that left the door wide open for Alicus to do it, and he did it. Because Alicus, he's gonna do everything he can to be the number one guy in his cluster, and Cloak was the guy that was gonna let him do it. I mean, how lucky could Alicus? I mean, if Alicus had started in a cluster with anyone else, he wouldn't have been able to have done what he did.
He's dead. He's 100% dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it's unusual, I think, for you to have a guild in the 40s like XOXO that has such a strong core of like veteran players who legitimately are trying to play, and it seems kind of strange if you're like the 30s or even like in this case, like 20s and OPA to squander that and not take advantage of the fact that like, DYE like is trying really hard and those players are interested in trying really hard, but they also do respect players that have been around longer than them, which is what I like about them. Like they're not hard-headed like a lot of guilds like that are. So they which is why they make such good allies to us, because we do work together. It's not just us. They're not like our meat shield or anything. We work together, but they also respect, like, we have this like veteran core. And it's kind of wild to me that there's all these other clusters that see this veteran core that clearly is trying to play and didn't want anything to do with it, wanted to not.
I know. It's like, were they just mad that Stella left? I don't know.
I honestly think it might be just something like
Because
that.
Costello was super fucking toxic in the guild. He was super toxic. So.
Fair enough. I have no idea about anything like that.
Well, I wouldn't even know if he's like super toxic, but he always attempted to be toxic. Yeah, I'm going to take that back a step. Costello's like not actually a very good flamer, but he does try to flame a lot.
Yeah, he's a terrible flamer.
Oh yeah. So
that's why he keeps like me and Ben around, you know, so he can just go off on people.
Yeah, so you can back him up, but like do it better.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I think we agree on a lot of this 40s and 30s Diplo stuff and how it came together. So yeah, makes sense to me. I'm glad it makes sense to you too.
Yeah.
So now I wanted to talk about, we're going to get your serious face on. We're going to talk about the main topic is that why do we think the people say, and why it is, the Astro Empire's player base in general just like doesn't really get along. They're very mean to each other. Do you have any little fun theories on that?
I want to start this off by saying I love this because the reaction I expect to get that you having me around to talk about this is going to be incredible.
I did get one message like in game that was like, why do you even have Tuxedo on?
Yeah, well, especially just like with this topic, because like the big meme of like me being like the most toxic player in the player base that comes around occasionally. Like even players that have never played with me have like propagated this meme because it's just kind of like so strong. So I imagine there's going to be a somewhat visceral reaction in some cases.
Because I would say you're not the most toxic person. Absolutely not. We can all be at some degree toxic.
Yes.
It was Ben that sent it to me. I didn't know who sent it to me. I didn't know who Mewtwo was. So okay, It was Ben. Okay.
Yeah, I've definitely been toxic. So I mean, you know, I'm not trying to say I'm not. But yeah, in terms of this, like the community in general, I mean, of course, there's the general. It's kind of similar to like if you have to rank like the toxic video games, right? There's like MOBAs are like some of the most toxic communities in video games. And I feel like a lot of that. The reasons for that apply to Astro Empires as well, where like there's so much of the game that is just tedious. It's just tedious waiting for shit to tick down. You spend months doing nothing, literally nothing, but just like making money, just trying to survive until the one fun thing happens. And the fun thing happens at 3 a.m. and you show up and some fucking asshole in your guild doesn't wake up at 3 a.m. like you did and you lose.
Yeah, because Astro Empires, there's nothing to do but aside from watch timers tick down and talk to the other people. And the game is, despite it being a spreadsheet game, it's actually so personal. And you spend months and months doing something, and just like even just one person can completely fuck it up for you.
Yes, and it's also one of the few games where you can legitimately ruin someone's like account. Like, you know, if you play like Rocket League or League of Legends or something, you might kill someone in that game and ruin that game, but it's going to end. They're going to move on. In Astro Empires, you can legitimately ruin 6 months, years of someone working at something and completely run it into the ground, and there's nothing they can do about it.
Yeah. There's really not recovery in Astro Empires. There's 2.0 where there's sort of it, but also not really at all.
Yeah, it almost made it. In some ways, it made it worse. I see the attempt. Like fleet maintenance is the attempt to make recovery possible, and it's definitely possible. But you have to have such a strong like mental to recover in this game, and sometimes it's just not worth it. Like you try to recover, and it requires not just you trying to recover, but 40, 50 other people also having a strong mental game and wanting to recover as well.
Because it's just so much can just get taken away in an instant by one jerk ass who someone who just decided he wanted to suicide. He didn't like what his guild was doing or for whatever reason, and he suicided and screwed his guild. I've been that person before. That's been me. That's been me.
Yep.
And I look back, I'm like, yeah, there's probably a lot of people that could hate me still to this day, and I would deserve it, and I would. But
Yeah, it's
yeah,
it takes literally one moment. Like you have to do just one thing to someone, and you've ruined so much of their time that they will just never
because
they'll
it's
never
such a
forgive you for
huge
it.
time sink. Yeah, it's been there for 9 months, a year, and you can just some jerk ass can take it away in an instant, and there's nothing you could have done about it. And it's
Yeah,
just,
and as you said, like it's such a game of like just talking to people because it's
mhm.
the spreadsheets that when someone backstabs you, yeah, it's so much more personal. It's not just like,
Oh my god! Speaking of which, Spartan is in chat saying that yes, he's done that by accident.
yeah, Spartan. I still don't buy it. I got to be honest.
I was high.
I still appreciate you messaging me on Discord after to try to like apologize for it. I still don't buy it, dude. My account's life flashed before my eyes, and I will never ever trust you again. And this just speaks to the point. Like some dude, even if it was an accident, we give him benefit of the doubt. It's an accident. I was so close to just like quitting the server from that like I just can't trust him anymore. Like I will never be on the same blob as him. Like it just won't happen.
Spartan is just like a stick of dynamite with a fuse, and like you don't know how long the fuse is, but the fuse is always lit. He's ready to explode at any moment, and that is Spartan.
Yeah, luckily I've turned over a new leaf, so I'm not going to be toxic to him.
What?
I'm a good guy now. I'm completely non-toxic, so I'm just avoiding him. But I will, I trust his apology that it was an accident, but I am going to avoid him.
Yeah, that's probably smart. And I also think that us having a Discord has actually made it worse because now you just have that constant contact to other people, so you can just go in there and say whatever you want to someone else, like publicly as you can, and you just be a dick to
100%.
anyone as much as you can.
At least the forums had to be like about a topic. Like you had to make like, hey, this thing happened here. Let's talk about it. The Discord is just like you just shit post. You pop in and just shit post for no reason.
Yeah, and some people have that time to just prolifically shit post.
Yeah,
and then you can just make that Discord just so uncomfortable for people.
I mean, I understand because that's the main reason I use it is just to shit post. I just show up, see something, and just start shit posting about it in there. So almost nothing I've said in that server has been serious.
Yeah, there have been like this is like earlier on in Astro News time, but there are people that like people I've never heard of before. They message me and they'll be like, they're like, oh, is it always like this in your chat or always like this in your Discord? Do people always acting like this or whatever? I'm like, yeah, it's pretty normal. That's what it is. And they're like, yeah, like I'd like to talk in chat, but I'm afraid I'll just get yelled at.
Yeah. What's actually kind of funny is when you've seen like newer players post, as long as they don't post something really stupid, like, I mean, of course, like you're gonna roast someone who just comes in and starts saying some dumb shit. But like, I mean, I saw a guy post that was like, "Hey, I'm new to this game. Like, should I not post where I'm at?" And people were like, "Yeah, here, this is what you generally want to go for. Like, DM me if you need help." So there's like some elements of.
Because really, we are kind of nice to new people. And there have just been some times where there have been new people that also like are belligerent and they'll be like, well, I'm just going to do this anyway. Because I can remember some people that, like, I usually have liked to train people in Astro, and sometimes people just say, well, I know this is why, but I don't do it. Well, I'm not going to do it. But in this Discord, from what I've seen from new people, they've actually, like, we've been nice to them and we have shown them things. Because, like, there was a guy asking about attacks last night, and, like, 3 people jumped in to talk to him about attacks, what he can do to attack the space. So I think we're really not as mean to new people as it is. But as Wodan just typed in chat, new people can equal potential spy. That's half the problem. I think these people that are coming in the Discord are getting a better response than the in-game people, because in-game it is super easy for just a person to pretend to be like, I'm new, let me in your pre-made guild that was an attempt to win the server. And they're going to be like, no, I don't know you. Because
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely correct. Like if you have a pre-made guild, you're not really letting in new players. And it's kind of a catch-22 because if they're bad, you're more likely to trust that they're a new player but at the same time, you don't want a bad player. But if they're surprisingly good for a new player, then you're like,
yeah,
yeah, it could be an asset, but also could definitely just be someone's multi.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that's the problem with this game. The barrier to entry is very low. It's one of the good things about the game, but also the problem. Barrier to entry is really low, so there's nothing to stop. Like, you know, in like World of Warcraft or something, you have to pay $15 a month to keep that second account going and have your like other character in the other like, you know, side. In this, you don't. You just show up and make a new account. You're good to go.
Yeah, and also Astro Empires is super not noob friendly, not at all.
No.
So usually your first server, which is still like a months and months investment, is a complete wash. So you have to like Astro Empires and suck at it in order to, and so much in that you want to like play the next server and do it better. Like,
it's a tall order.
Yeah, it's super hard to get into it.
Well, and it sucks because the game used to be a lot more noob friendly in like beta, etc., and alpha before anyone knew how to play.
Yeah,
because you could just show up and sure you could be a noob, but you could. It didn't matter. Fucking vets, pros that have been playing this game. I mean, at the time, you know, a pro was like someone who'd been playing for over a year.
Yeah.
But we're building on fucking Gaia planets and arids and shit. And so if you just start as a new player built on anything, as long as you logged in every fucking 12 hours, you were fine. Like, no one cared.
Yeah.
But we figured out how to play the game on such like a efficient level that like if you're like at 90% efficiency, you're a bad player. A good player is someone operating at like 99% efficiency. So anyone below that is like you're mad at because how fucking dare you like not be.
Yeah, the game's figured out. The guide's there. Why aren't you clicking the buttons the same way I'm clicking the buttons?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's definitely. It's I mean, you see it even amongst vets, like where like a vet one server will just not put in the effort to like scout or do whatever, like do that ultra time sync and just get flamed. Like fucking Abe is in the chat right now, and it's kind of a joke because everyone loves Abe because he's so nice. But the flame around Abe is just like, you know, when's the last time Abe actually tried at the game? Was like, you know, 5 years ago or whatever.
Maybe Iridium. Like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the common thread, even amongst vets. It's like you didn't even fucking try for the last 3 years I played with you, so fuck you.
Oh yeah, like I'm in a full not trying Astro at all time right now. I came up to the 30s and I didn't hit a single base. I did sync to attack the war blob, but they wanted me to stay up till 11 p.m. to attack it, and I fell asleep with my phone in my hand.
You're a dad. You can't do that.
I know. Fuck yeah. Imagine me setting an alarm to wake up in the middle of the night with the baby and baby mama in the room next to me and waking them up too. Imagine that happening in 2020. It's not.
No, you're getting divorced.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think my experience is very, very low. And that's just what it's going to be.
You've actually found the cheat code by just like doing this Twitch stream that no one can ever be mad at you. They kind of like just want you to be
no, I can still make people mad at me. I have still managed to do that. Don't worry.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because I know, like, but yeah, that's one thing that I do like about like when I have played Astro hard. Like I do like that I just am a villain in game. I like to be bad and do bad things, but pretty straightforward about it. So I feel okay about it.
Yeah, no, that's I'm with you. That's my thing. Is like I'm quote unquote the bad guy in every guild I'm in, but I mean, I like to think maybe someone will call me out for this, but I like to think I'm usually pretty straightforward. Like I usually am not a backstabber. I try not to be, but I am mean to players in my guild who, you know, as we said earlier, that are like, it's those types of players where their account is really bad, like just obviously terrible. And you message them and you're like,
ooh, quick question for you. Oh, Tuxedo, quick question. Ben wants to post, Ben wanted to call you a cunt, but the automod blocked it, so he couldn't call you that.
Oh. Hello, Ben.
In chat. Unbelievable.
Ben,
and Southie says, denied not because of the word, but because of Ben. So perfect.
Exactly. Ben not allowed.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, it's those types of players that you like message like, hey, here's a better way to build your account. Like you could, you're clearly active. You've taken every fucking United colony in this galaxy. You log in once every 2 hours. There's no reason for you to have such a shit account. Here's how I can help you. And then they just go, well, actually, I like my slot 1 asteroid because it gives me 4 solar energy, 5 solar energy, even though it has 3 fertility. Fuck you. And you're like, all right, dude, just never mind. You're out.
The best new player that I ever had was, because he was like new, but he was building really well. And he was like, I was asking him, I was like, how do you have one of like this best accounts in the guild? This doesn't add up. And he's like, oh, I've just been copying your bases and building what's cheapest. I was like, well, all right then. I was like, all right.
That's what's crazy. People like, what do you do? Just literally look at the numbers. This gives you this much stats for that much money. Then there's no advanced thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not. If you look at
find the top account in your guild and just build on what they build on.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah, there's only a few structures that matter. You build the cheapest one and you go down the row, blah, blah, blah. And it's so simple, but because like even on these servers that like I'm not trying hard on, like I know we just had like a fucking catastrophe in the 30s and every guild went there. But now I have some account that's like top 50 just because some people lost a bit of their fleet. And that's still because even though I'm simming and doing nothing, I've built the structures the right way. And you can still not have a hot garbage account if you just click the buttons the right way. And there is still a surprising amount of people that don't do that.
That just like suck, yeah. Or just don't. I don't understand that. The building aspect of this game is easy, like 100%. Yeah. It's tedious, but it's the easiest part. There's no reason to have a bad account in like that sense.
No, there's really not, especially when you've played this game for over a decade. So, but yeah, we've talked about new players and really how we are probably kind of nice to them in the Discord. Is there anything else, any final summary that you want to talk about today before we get into the Antares timeline?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, to cap off this entire reason we're so toxic in this game is sort of like capitalist alienation. You see, as we invest time and money into things, we're all ultimately the proletariat. So we end up fighting amongst each other because the upper echelons, like Wizard, start just taking advantage of us. They're sapping us for all our resources. And we fight amongst each other and get angry at each other because we're fighting for limited resources that have been given to us by the ruling classes of this game. So if we just banded together, then the community would be much less toxic because we'd have a communist utopia in Astro Empires.
All right, guys, I'm just getting word from the FBI. We're going to have to let Tuxedo Marx go. Something happened, and the government has decided that just can't go on. So, but everyone, let's thank Tuxedo so much for coming on today. I think we really appreciate all of his thoughts, every last one. But guys, the stream's not over, not by a long shot. I've been stringing you along this whole time just before we get to this Antares timeline. Now, we're going to start here at the very start of the server, and we're going to go all the way up to the A30s. Okay, here we go. All right, let's take care of this. All right. So, all right, we're going to go into the Antares timeline. Yeah, let's know more of that. You can't just randomly troll in the chat. That's fun. Go start another one of your own news networks. That'll be fun. But let's go right into the Antares timeline where we're going to get to all the action in the 30s where we really talk about a lot of that. So we're just going to start from the start. And yeah, 321 server begins. I streamed the startup and even in the Discord. That was a lot of fun. So yeah, there's a lot of guilds in different clusters. I know there are some guilds that change their name over time, but instead we're just going to, like, if they change their names a bunch, we're just going to go with their final name. Like, what is it? D&D started as like R88. I'm not going to go over all their name changes. They're just going to be D&D now. So anyway, in the lower zeros, there's SF led by Baylor. There's in the upper zeros, there's the Go led by Fuckabank. There's SFA, that's SF Subguild. Thog is also there, dying in the middle. Lower 10s, there's Total led by Belwar. They're associated to WP and Ready. Upper 10s, there's USSR led by Trace, associated with guilds VVDV and also RA. I guess I didn't write them down. Oh well. And there's 2 Def guilds in the middle, Defiance, and they're trying their best to survive. In the lower 20s, there's OPA led by Chansey, associated with guilds ZZZ and Mean. And in the upper 20s, there's U Corp and associated guilds Shreks and Stars. Lower 30s, there was D&D led by Alicus, associated guilds BNB. They had that sub-guild Anarchy with the other 30s guilds. Upper 30s, there was Japan led by Cloak and their associated guilds Trek and War. All right, let's get the next part in here. Boop. All right, first 3 weeks of the server. Not a lot of fighting happens, except for in that A33, which is Alicus's guild against Xeno's guild. Xeno's guild ended up being called Iran. It was them fighting. Iran was bigger. They were in 33 and the other galaxy next to it, and Alicus was just in 33. They fight for weeks until the upper 30s really intervenes and kind of makes them stop fighting. On the 5th of April, Annan's first episode, which highlights include Frosty not knowing what guilds are in his cluster, Scott insisting China was easy to control, and Xeno calling DPS mush, all of which were great starter points for the Annan to go off of. Upper 30s officially intervene in the 30s. I believe it was April 9th. If I'm off by a day or two, it is what it is. Everyone's packed in the 30s at that point, and that is Trek, War, Japan, SWAT, Iran, Box. Yeah, SWAT eventually becoming D&D. Their GM noticeably described this as having 2 packs. These guilds all combined for over 300 players. They also have, what is the sub-guild? I don't know, whatever. Cloak is personally warned on the A&M by Frosty. I posted that clip the other day. And he's saying that if you packed Alicus, it's going to come back to bite you. This is foreshadowing. And then the 40s open. Oh, no, I'm not giving Frosty credit. He literally posted it, and I asked him about it on the show. The 40s open around that time. The lower 40s is XOXO, led by Stella. Upper 40s is DYE, led by Boom. In the middle, there was Power. They died, and then they became Lost later, and then they died too. We'll get to that when we get to it. By 4:15, the 10s have also packed it up, which is like the next week. Which has dropped their illusion of being pre-server pacted, which they were. DEF and LGN were pacted to the lower 10s, but they got pushed out of that pact, and they're still trying to survive down there. USSR, VVV, HC, Ready, XP, WP, and RA, they all combined for over 300 players. 4:15, also, the 20s are all packed too. OPA, ZZZ, Mean, U-Corp, Shrek's Hive. They didn't really fight at all. They didn't do anything. They combined for over 200 players. U-Corp and Shreks, they're like small in their like Hive, their sub-guild. Like they were a little bit smaller, and Mean was a little bit smaller. So even though it's like the same amount of guilds, it wasn't like quite as many players. It's more players now, but whatever. All big Zerg clusters. All right, let's get into the next part. On 4/20, a great day for this. That's not the right day, but that is when Frosty begins his career as a poet. A few days later on that weekend, it's Belwar's first launch to AO9. They recalled. Also on that day, that's when Go and SF are officially pacted to repel the Belwar invasion. And that was one of my favorite days in the Discord when Hellfire was saying that Corvettes get better ratios than fighters, which I loved so much I'm talking about it again now, 2 months later. About a week later, lots of guilds go to the 40s after they open up to the public. Japan and Trek launched 2 different LZs. This is foreshadowing. In the 40s, in an attempt to hit power in the mid-40s and die in the upper 40s. Both guilds recall before landing. USSR in total, they launched to the lower 40s. They actually managed to land. USSR, however, does leave quickly because they noticed some OPA fleet was missing because OPA Like they'd sent like a little bit of fleet up to go after Trek to help DYE. But USSR is like, my bases! And they left and they went back home. But Total stayed there and they farmed for a little bit or whatever. By about the next week, Trek in War launched against Power and Wolf in A45, the first crash of the server. It is not profitable. And despite being incredibly outnumbered, Power and Wolf contest anyway, and they just die. It was an easy win for Trek in War, but like I said, it wasn't profitable. It was before any capitals, and everyone had like armor 7, so no one made any profit. Power and Wolf generally disband and merge into the guild Lost, and Lost becomes the guild that the upper 30s tries to prop up as their ally in the 40s. Hold on to that knowledge. A few days later, while still in the 40s, after their crash a few days prior, War turns on their prior ally XOXO due to some scheming screenshots from Dat Playful Sin trying to it was like from a week before, and he was trying to organize some like total 40s resistance against Zahaga. And like that was their defense, that the screenshots were from a week ago, but they shouldn't count. And they might have been out of context because they're from a week ago, but it's like they were still kind of scheming against them. I'm sure the truth lies somewhere in the middle. And just about the next day, I could estimate like by the 12th, after a disagreement between D&D and Box, D&D uses that as a pretense to drop their pact and absolutely devour Box. The rest of Box's allies in the 30s just say, yeah, fuck you, Box. And they just reap the profits. D&D just gets it all to themselves. Cloak Chamberlain, GM of Japan, says there will be peace in our time. All right. Coming up next is probably the most important date of the server. I mean, for sure. All right. 514, a day that will live in infamy. Celeste damns us all when she says this in the Astro Empire's Discord. The dragon does not sleep with goats. Celeste, infamous right there. Please delete it. He's going to start calling himself the dragon. That was officially May 14th. Arguably the most impactful date on the entire server. What have you done? A couple days later, Japan lands an A47 and derbs a little bit of inactive Dai fleet. Dai generally evacs their fleet to A48. Roughly the next day, Belwire has their second launched AO9. You'll be shocked to learn that they recalled. And about the same time, or actually no, because that was an ANN day, Iran times a launch into the upper 20s to coincide, that I spelled incorrectly, with the ANN start time. It wasn't a very successful trip. They got to derb a little bit, but it was a sneaky plan. I mean, they tried. All right. Let's see. 518, the next day, Japan gets recall trapped by the A20's alliance, choosing to disband or let a little bit get derbed of 10 million fleet in midair. 518 through 520, in response, the 10s and 30s began to joint launch to the A20s to 3 different landing zones. Only Total is allowed to land in the lower 20s, and that's because OPA was trying to bait them to kill them, and Total left like an hour later. Also, at the same time, OPA starts getting forwarded A30's cluster leadership plans and movements from an unexpected power grabber. We don't know who's forwarding these screenshots. I just know that is when they started. 520, D&D launches at China when China's pre-server ally intervenes and forces D&D to recall. D&D's GM takes it as a personal breach of honor for some reason, and now Alicus hates Trace forever. Fine. 523, the 50s open. I hope I got the date right on that. But people do not flock to it like they did the 40s. Scott officially left the A10s to restart there, terrified of the Zerg that he created in the 10s. All right. May 27th. It was good until Volatile lost his dreads. Volatile, well, we might talk about him. Oh, we're going to be talking about him very soon. May 27th, Trek made another one of their weekly trips up to the 40s to go after Dai, but Dai just clicked the VM button on them. And Trek, on their trip home, they decided to stop in A40 first, so they were on a trip from like 48 or 49 all the way down to 40 instead of just going back to the 30s. So OPA launched up there to recall trap them again. And so, yeah, OPA catches them again. It's the second recall trap by OPA. As much as it was terribly boring playing for them for the first 2 months, they ended up doing some cute stuff in May against the upper 30s. June 2nd, yeah, roughly that time, about when they land, D&D launches the A45 and eats Lost in an easy crash. Now, I say it was an easy crash, but they launched with like really similar numbers, and even with similar numbers, they just completely smashed them. They just crushed Lost up there. Lost, as we mentioned before, was the guild that the upper 30s was going to be propping up, or yeah, Trek War Japan was going to be propping up there. Cloak says this is fine. Nothing bad can come from this. At the same time, Belwar launches the DYE in the 40s. They end up recalling because, as a PM that Belwar forwarded to me, Alicus says, "You're just another one of Trek's dogs. You get the fuck out of here, recall, or I'm going to kill you." And that was basically what that message said. Nothing happens on Antares for like 2 weeks after that. Slow time. People are playing speed server. It was boring time. About this time is when the A50s lose protection, and of course, Trek is the first guild to visit the 50s, because of course they are. 614, Belwar's third launch at 09. They recalled. 621, there is a diplomatic scuffle in the lower 30s between Iran and DID over Iran's player Volatile and D&D's player Nerf Herder. Yeah, Volatile had like broken the pact and got kicked from his guild. And when he got kicked from his guild, he leaked Iran's and Japan's like launch details to the lowers. But then Iran like let him back in anyway. I don't know. But D&D was like, no, super fuck this guy. He said, you're getting a KOS, a kill on sight, straight out of 2020. And that was super fighting words. And if they didn't remove them from his guild, they were going to remove him for them. But as quickly as the situation was getting explosive, it just seemed to go away. And by go away, I mean Iran's GM Zeno left to join war. Their VGM Electo just straight up deleted. He's gone. And the rest of their players just merged in D&D, and they created another guild. They got rid of Iran, but they made BNB. So in D&D was they were called OG at the time. They decided to make their guilds officially linked together. Yeah, OG became D&D, Iran became BNB. It wasn't as cut and dry as that. They moved some players, shuffled the players a little bit, but that's what happened there. And now we have a real short part of it. Not a lot of text here because we're going to talk about... Sorry, I'm very popular. We're going to talk about just a few dots before I talk a lot about the 30s imploding, which June 25th, 2LZ, the foreshadowing comes full circle. Japan and Total and Ready and WP launch at 09, and they actually decide to land despite a really bad sync. They landed at 2 different landing zones. Japan's LZ only synced 20 million, while Todi Ready and WP, they synced like 40 million, maybe 42, something like that. Anyway, so Go just contests the 20 million sync because that's obviously way easier to kill, forcing the teens to try to do a second sync at the dead Japan site, and they just absolutely wrecked them. They got super murdered. They got like 30% profit on a crash 3 months into the server, which is goddamn absurd. That's ludicrous profit for that early in the game, but when you LZ to 2 different places and Go knows how to use their capital ships, you're going to get just super smashed. Super smashed. And so Japan's in bad shape. At about the same time, we're going to, or not at the same time, a few days forward, we're going to go to like 6/29, June 29th. The 30s implode. Or do they explode? It's one of the two. Fighting breaks out between D&D and BNB, plus their 40s allies, XOXO and DYE, against Trek War in Japan. Now, XOXO and DYE, well, I guess XOXO is fate now. Like the 40s, they hate the upper 30s. They hate them because they just mess with them literally all server long. And so they were more than happy to jump at the opportunity to go help Alicus's guilds against the upper 30s. But some say that this cluster breakup had its origins from Trek's GM Admiral Kirk, aka Derek, attempting to scheme against D&D, which was. This claim was supported by one screenshot of Derek asking DYE's GM if they would side with D&D or Trek if fighting began between D&D and Trek. Which, just as an aside, what kind of diplomatically tactless dummy flat out asks the question like that? Just like, what an idiot. I've encountered Derek before on Elysium and Frontier, and this guy's like, he's super obsessed with being in leadership, but kind of doesn't really belong there probably. But he still managed to scam Cloak and Zahaga into leading one of their 3 guilds, so that's just another shining mark on the Cloak and Zahaga decision-making process. But Trek was just hyper-focused on the 40s all server long, made a lot of enemies there. It was like eventually trying to prop up like the guild BOW against the other existing 40s guilds, and Bo was just like super tiny and effectively not useful. But so like they just did absolutely everything they could to make enemies out of the 40s. And it wasn't even just Trek that had messed with the 40s all server long. Japan had made trips there. War had made trips there. Like, it's just no surprise that the 40s were going to make friends with anybody, regardless of their origins, against Trek War in Japan. Some say this cluster breakup had its origins from D&D's GM Alicus threatening Trek in their 30s Cluster Alliance chat room. This was told to me by Trek's wackadoo GM Derek, and he says that he can't give any screenshots of it because when Alicus left the 30s Alliance chat, he deleted all of his messages from it, so he doesn't have anything to show from that, and never sent any screenshots of that, so who knows if that's true or not, but that's what he said. I would love to see something of just a bunch of deleted messages, which would be great, but I don't have it. I do have a screenshot that Belwar had sent me from like the start of June. That's Alicus when he's like telling him to recall from the 40s for just having like any association with Trek. So there may be truth to the story, but it's pretty funny if he did delete all those messages. That's pretty fucking funny. And some say that's cluster breakup even had its origins starting from the OPA recall trap with Japan, when someone began forwarding the 30s cluster leadership chat to OPA. Oh, there's evidence. I'm just not tacky enough to show it. Don't worry. More Derek lies. Yep. But yeah, OPA started getting forwarded a lot of 30s guilds movements from Trek War in Japan. A lot of those movements were getting forwarded to OPA leadership. So maybe it even started back in May, the seeds of the lower 30s fighting the upper 30s. But I'm not going to show any screenshots. That'd be rude. But I mean, if you're going to have a past, you might as well make it multiple choice. And D&D's GM chose a screenshot of Trek's DM Derek asking DYE's GM Boom Boom who they would side with if D&D attacked Trek as their official pretense to move towards Trek's recall point. So, in response to D&D declaring that Trek was dead meat, Japan's GM Cloak made the bizarre choice. Well, their fleet was still down in A30. And actually, Southie, yeah, go ahead and do that. I don't want him fucking spinning and shit in my chat. Get him out of here. So Japan's GM made the choice to they were in A30 and they decided they wanted to go to A32 on a practice launch. The dumbest thing in the world. No, see, here's the thing. You're always like, oh, this is censorship. This is the new. No, it's my show, it's my news. If someone's gonna come in and just say dumb shit constantly, fuck him, get the fuck out of my chat. I'm not into that. Not interested. Move along. Cloak moves in at 32 on a practice launch And in a shocking turn of events, as soon as they land at 32, they start shooting D&D bases in 32. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it when Japan did that. So Japan fires the very first physical shots of the war. Well, I guess D&D and B&B hadn't officially moved to the recall point of Trek. They'd said they were going to do it, and they were getting in position for it. So, yeah, they didn't. Yeah, D&D didn't fire the official first shots, and it was Japan that did because they decided that hitting a few bases in 32, that was what it was going to be. Let's see. I've lost my place because it was fun to talk about Cloak's dumbass practice launch. Yeah. So that was when fighting officially breaks out. Over the next couple of days, a lot of guilds from out of cluster come to visit the 30s. From the zeros, SF launches to the lower 30s to hit some D&D and B&B bases. 10s guilds, USSR and VVV, they launch to the lower 30s to hit some D&D and B&B bases. 20s guilds, OPA, ZZZ, Mean, U-Corp, Shreks, they all launch to the upper 30s to hit Trek War Japan bases. 40s guilds, DYE and Fake, they had launched to the upper 30s to support D&D/B&B with their derbing of some of the main fleets that were left of Japan War Trek. And D&B and B&B, they got to, a lot of the First Blood, they got to derb various War Trek Japan fleets as they were ineptly committing their fleets to move around the cluster. They got to eat a lot of inactive fleets. SF was the first guild to leave the 30s, followed by the 10s guilds the following day. Fun fact, when SF pulled out, they didn't tell USSR. They just said fuck it and left, which was a treat. We were friends on Mira, Abe. Fun fact, we played together on Mira. Let's see, where are we at here? Yeah, SF was the first guild to leave, then the teens left. The 20s farmed their way down from 39 to 35, eventually killing War's remaining blob. And they hit just about all of the bases that were available of those 5 galaxies. Yeah, I knew it was roughly, thank you, Odin, I knew it was roughly 30 to 40 million, but I didn't remember exactly. So Japan in war got super murdered for Trek's dumb nonsense. War lost most of their fleet trying to protect Trek's recall point, and then they ended up relocating, some of them relocating to the 10s. At the end of all of this, Trek War Japan, they're cooked, they're finished. In the end, the lower 30s only took some minor base casualties, and they got to eat a lot of inactive fleet, roughly 40 million, as Wodan posted for us. And the upper 30s guilds, Trek War Japan, just decimated. Cloak and Zahaga, they quit. A handful of upper 30s players, mostly Trek guys, are relocating to the zeros. It couldn't be more decisive. D&D and B&B just absolutely outplayed the upper 30s. Diplomatically, politically, fleet command, all of it, in every single way they possibly could. And regardless of how we got there, by hook or by crook, Alicus straight up outplayed the hell out of them. He doesn't play second fiddle, and Cloak and Zahaga, as FK's saying, they don't know how to commune flat at all. I don't think they know how to run their Diplo at all either. Because, the signs were right there. Alicus, and his guilds were, they derped their other allies. And Cloak, even against, Trek or Iran, Cloak laid down for Alicus all server long. He said, no, Alicus is in the right. And if you're going to be weak-willed like that, Alicus is going to steamroll over you every time. And that's exactly what happened. He was just way smarter, way better with his fleet, way better with motivating his players. And he crushed them, and the cluster was his. Anyone, not even anyone did say that this was going to happen, and everyone seemed to know it but Cloak. They're smart plays. You play to make your guild be number one. Oh yeah, they were absolutely dead weight DPS. We're not saying that zerging up 1,000 guilds in your cluster and out of cluster was the right play. No one's saying that they're not very lame for their lack of fleet command and doing nothing with their huge zergs and other clusters. They lost on all their other servers. This was a new fun way for them to lose on Antares. They got to change it up. They need to change what they're doing. maybe this can be the wake-up call they need, that being very passive with 150 plus players isn't the way to go. Yeah. But to say that, I mean, Alicus is generally in the right here. He's allowed to kill the allies of his allies. He's fully allowed to do that. And if you're gonna not see where this is coming, because you can drop a pact with the guild. It is what it is. If you're deciding they're not being a good ally, you don't need to have a pact with them anymore. And if you have like a rogue guild like the Trek and their GM like trying to do little bits of backdoor stuff, you can just say fuck it, I'm done with it, and jack them. So because and them deciding to finally put their foot down on Trek was, I mean, that was the end. It is what it is. I hope I talked about the A30s enough. I know I saved it till the very end of the show as much as I could. Well, you only wanted to kill Kirk now. They just would have been later. Later when you got bored of them too. Oh no, it was not surprising how decisive it was. Trek was out of position, Japan was out of position. It was super prime for D&D to just like fucking kill them all. So like it was not crazy how it was so decisive. It was exactly what was expected for it to be that decisive. They don't know how to move their fleets. That's how they lost like 40 million in actives, and then the war just let the rest of their fleet just die. Japan had lost a ton of fleet too. It was ripe for them to say, I'm tired of your nonsense. D&D and B&B run the cluster now. It is what it is. Yeah. You don't play the game to make your guild be number 8. You play to win. And Alicus plays to win, and he made a winning play. He knows who is like the only people left in his cluster are his confirmed allies. He knows he has great allies in the 40s now because he helped them get revenge on the 30s and mess with them all server. It was the perfect time for all of it for him. Yeah, the play was good. The spin was not. The spin was just so absolutely unnecessary. Absolutely unnecessary. But, guys, we talked about so much today. I hope that nothing happens on Antares for another 2 weeks so I can take a break again. I wrote a lot. Oh boy. Go was Finland in World War II. I don't get it. Whatever, Wodam. But anyway, guys, I want to thank you all so much for watching the show yet again. I appreciate your time. I really do. Let me get down to my end. I gotta scroll. Oh my god, I lost it. Where's my ending speech paragraph? I don't know it. Good God. Oh God, bi-weekly was so much better. I loved Not Last Weekend writing and doing shit all weekend. Like I wrote 5,000 fucking words for this, dude. I would love to not do that every week. So depending on how much happens, we'll see what happens if I just go back to every week's or not. We'll see. Like I'll figure it out by Thursday. That's when I usually make the forum post. Yeah, maybe Southie, maybe. But thank you everyone for tuning in to the Season 2 premiere, the ANN Season 2 premiere, lol. I haven't finished most of that production stuff that I talked about 2 weeks ago, but I did make a lot of progress on it all, so it's not like it's super far away, and I got my green screen in yesterday, so I can do some wacky fun stuff with it, whoa. And I'm glad to show that there's like tangible evidence that I'm not just like, I don't know, buying a bottle of booze with your sub money. I'm buying it for green screen stuff to make the stream even better. It's going back to you, baby. But as always, if you're interested in coming on the ANN, you got a hot tip to give me, you don't need to be Astro famous. Just let me know. You can send me a message in-game, Discord, Twitch, wherever you can find me. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Hold on, where's my end screen? Hold on. Where is it?